Lewis is calling from Scotland. You are playing out of Glasgow, right? And you say that it's pretty rare to get a big game there?
Yeah, it's pretty rare to kind of get a big game anywhere in kind of Scotland. If you want to get any, even the bigger tournaments, you have to go down to England. So yeah, kind of 1-2 cash is kind of the biggest cash games up here. If you wanted a bigger one, I know of a few private games that play a bit bigger, who play like kind of 2-5. But apart from that, yeah, 1-2 is kind of the game to be at.
So like 1-2 pounds, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And what's the buy-in structure?
At the casino that I typically play at, it's actually well, no cap, but most people typically just buy in for 1,000 or below.
Oh, what? It's no cap? Wow,
There's no official cap, yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah.
So, but people buying it for 1,000 is a lot, though. Remember, pounds are worth more than dollars. It's probably like a 1,200, 1,300, something like that. It's a pretty good setup. Do you guys straddle and stuff?
There's optional straddles, optional to 5. It kind of game dependent if that
Uh-huh.
goes on or not. It's either everyone does it or no one does it.
Okay, so is this hand straddled?
No.
Okay, and how deep are you?
I have 342 effective. This hand doesn't go to the river, so it's just kind of my stack that's the most relevant.
All right, 342 effective. Okay, so start us off here.
So I am under the gun, and I've got the king, queen of clubs, and I raise to £7.
So hero under the gun with king of clubs, queen of clubs makes it 7, which is, I mean, I guess it's 3.5, right? 3.5x.
Yeah,
Is this the typical? Is that the typical open size?
yeah. Typical open sizes range between 6 and 8. There's a few people who'll raise to 10, but that's pretty normal, yeah.
Okay, so you make it 7. Okay.
And only the button and big blinds call.
So the button and the big blind call. Now, before you get to the flop, I just have to ask you a quick question here, because what I've heard, and I'll probably ask this question to every single, I don't know if you heard the top of this on this live stream, it's all euros. So the difference between, I think, playing in America, I don't know if you have the chance to play in America, versus in
Not
Europe.
yet, no.
Well, versus in Europe, besides the fact that actually, we complain about the rate in America, but I know it's quite high in a lot of places in Europe, is that I think that we have more of kind of a rich gambling history in the US, especially with poker, so that you'll have people who aren't that serious play a lot. And it's easy to find a game with sort of a lot of recreational players in the States. Whereas I think in Europe, it's not like that so much. And the games overall are tougher because there's less recreational money. I don't know what you think about that down at 1-2, but
I would definitely agree with you. It's very, very reg heavy. Like,
okay.
I'll sit down at the table. I've been playing at this particular casino for maybe 2 years now,
Hmm.
and pretty much every time I sit down, I recognize at least maybe 5 of the other players. So it's very, very much the same faces you see day in, day out.
You don't get a lot of randoms, then, is what you're saying.
No, even the people who, you do have your fish, but even
Hmm.
them, they're there most days as well.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay, so 7 times 3, the pot's like probably 20. What's the rate there like, by the way? Is it like some percentage up to a cap?
It's 5% up to £5, but that progresses depending on the size of the pot.
Okay. Oh, so it will get larger and larger.
Yeah, so it's 5 + 1's the max.
But the max they'll take is 6 pounds.
That's right, yeah.
That's actually not that bad compared to some of the small stakes in the US. Like I said, in California, where they'll flat drop like more than that, like in a 2-3 game. So
Yeah, I've heard a lot of your calls, and it's like some of the rake structures. I'm like, thank goodness I'm over here.
yeah, I'm going to put it up as 20 pounds. Okay, so we're 3 ways. Go ahead to the flop. King, queen of club.
The flop is the 3 of clubs,
Uh-huh.
jack of diamonds, and 4 of clubs.
So jack of diamonds, 4 of clubs, 3 of clubs. So you flop a flush draw. Jack 4-3, right? 2 clubs.
Yeah.
And you've got 2 overcards. You've got a 3 to a straight draw 2 on the backdoor side. So, and also too, anytime you get a board like this where 2 pair is not going to be all that relevant, or really not going to be, it shouldn't really be there. It's a little bit different. I mean, it's not the driest board in the world. Like say Jack 6 deuce, you would have no 2 pair. Although you do have a guy completing out of the big blind who can be wide. This is definitely ripe to see bet. I mean, you've got a lot of good properties in your hand. There's only 2 other people in the hand. Sometimes I would like I call it top pair dynamic-ish, like there's a chance the top pair is going to change. But you just have so much equity anyways against a jack and all other hands here with 2 overcards and club.
Yeah, so the big blind actually led out for £10.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so you would have c-bet, I assume.
I would have c-bet
Yeah.
this, yeah, with the flush draw. But this kind of big blind player, I've only played with him once before this time. He didn't really seem like a thinking player. He actually, a couple of hands before this, called a 3x river raise from myself with second pair because he thought I just didn't have anything. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here.
By the way, before I get into what I would do here, I do want to say from Mathemagical 55, because I always like this European talk, he says, the US has a richer poker history, but not a richer gambling history. We love to gamble on everything in the UK. And that is true. I will take back because I do remember when I lived in London, I lived there for a few semesters. I mean, they had, what is it called? William Hills or whatever it is, Thomas Hills, whatever, like off-track betting. That stuff was like off-track betting, but it was you bet on any sport. I remember betting on the Premier League when I was like 19 or 20 down next to the local chippy, like at every corner. We didn't really have that here in the States down the street. So, and battered sausage. I miss battered sausage. Anyways, and fried Mars bars is a Scottish thing too. So the big blind leads for for £10. I mean, so you've got 2 overcards and a flush draw. And you say you're 342 effective with these guys. Are these guys like deeper than you?
I think so, but not by much.
Okay. I mean, I would do a lot of raising here, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think that I would raise here with overpairs here too. A lot of times in these situations, when somebody leads out, now sometimes it gets a little bit wacky at the really small stakes, but a lot of times when someone leads out into the preflop raiser, it is going to be some sort of draw. Now, the lower stakes you go, the more it could be like a jack kind of figuring out where it's at. I don't hate calling either. And you can make a case where, depending on your stack sizes, like if you feel like you're not quite deep enough to barrel a guy off, you could call here as well. You do have a bunch of equity. So I think my gut here is I would be doing a lot of raising, but I think calling is okay as well. Now, you don't have the nut draw. So there, once in a while, there could be something to be said to like drive out the guy, maybe behind you. But I would probably do a fair amount of raising here, but I don't think it's terrible to call.
I did end up calling
Okay.
because I didn't feel like he was particularly strong. He probably just had kind of a 3 or a 4 or maybe some kind of weaker hand that was just kind of betting to see what it was at, like you said. And I did want to keep the button in case I did make my hand as well, was my kind of thinking.
Well, but if you thought he was weak, though, don't you want him to fold? Because, you don't beat like ace 4.
Well, I thought that if I did think that my overcards were live as well, so I did think that if I get anything like a club, a king, a queen, I'm going to have the best hand, and then on a further street, I would probably raise then.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I just think that when you have so much equity and some fold equity here, there can't be anything wrong with raising. And I feel like you could actually get a guy off of a hand later on if you start kind of putting the fear in God in him now at the smaller stakes, where he might actually have to start thinking about that he might, you might have that he's going to have to play for stacks. So what I mean by this is, say like he was betting out with the jack and you raised him and it got folded back around to him and he called, right? And then like the turn, let's say the turn was an ace or something like that, where you still don't have anything, and now he checks to you and you had like jack 10, you're going to bet and he's going to fold. But if you just call here, and let's say the turn's an ace and he checks to you and you bet, he's got a much better chance of like continuing on. So a lot of times I actually like to build the pot up early for max pressure, like fold equity wise against these guys, and get sort of them thinking that they might have to play for stacks here against like what is an overpair. Like I said, I don't think it's a mistake to call. That's just sort of my approach. But okay, so £10 you call. What does the guy behind you do?
Button also calls.
All right, so the button calls behind. And the only thing I would say here is that in the back of my head, there is a chance that somebody actually might have higher clubs than you, just because, like I said, usually, well, it's not usually, but there is some chance that the guy who's leading might have the nut flush draw. The button's also calling behind. Now, the thing about the button calling behind, and again, it's low stakes. the guy bet half the size of the pot you called. But in all honesty, the guy from behind on the button, he really should have at least a jack here to overcall, or he has a draw too.
Yeah.
So I mean, he shouldn't have like pocket eights or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
So
Button was playing pretty tight. He was a kind of younger guy, maybe a couple of years older than myself, but yeah, he was playing really tight that night.
so he's really tight. I mean, even more so, right? Even more so. I mean, about maybe that's another reason why you might actually consider raising on the flop, just because you don't have the nut draw and you don't actually have to worry about possibly your draw not necessarily being good in a given situation. But okay, so it's 50 pounds now to the turn, Jack 4-3 with two clubs. Okay.
So, funnily enough, what you saying about an ace? The turn is the ace of spades.
Okay. Interesting. So now you pick up a gut shot, right? We talked about some of your backdoor equity here. So it's the ace of spades. Okay.
So the big blind bets again. He bets 15.
15?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really interesting here because you know, I wowould say, like, if you told me, Lewis, okay, the big blind's betting again, but then you didn't tell me how much he was going to bet. Bet sizing is a huge factor here as to what I think that this guy has. Like, if he came out and he bet like 50, like full pot, I would be like, this is two pair plus, like almost 100%. He's betting 15 here. What's weird about this is like, it's kind of a blockish kind of stop bet. Like, he's not going to have just a jack here. I don't think he's going to have like Jack 10 or Queen Jack or something like this. I honestly think that maybe he might have something like Jack X of clubs, or he has possibly like the nut flush draw. Now, I'm not saying that I'm folding if I'm you here, but I don't know. This is weird because I remember from last week where we put, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, we put out this like really strange mathematical situation where a guy had just this gigantic draw. He had Jack 10 of diamonds or Jack 10 of hearts, was like a 15 out draw. And he got to the turn and we were thinking about him possibly folding because there was such a good chance that he was going to get overflush. And he ended up raising on the turn to try to drive the other guy out, even though he knew the guy that was putting pressure on him had like a set. Because we were thinking about what's the best way to play this. This kind of reminded me of this because I was like, well, could you raise and try to get the ace high flush draw out behind you? But that's never going to happen because the ace is on the turn here. So that's not going to work. So I don't see any reason to raise here now because I just don't think the big blind has like Jack X here.
Yeah, that was my thinking. I did start getting worried when he bet again. I was expecting a check after he got two callers. So I did end up calling again.
So hero calls. And what does the button do?
The button raises to 50.
Okay. All right. So the button, who you said was playing very, very tight, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think this range is here now?
I definitely thought that he had hit at the ace, definitely. Not a particularly strong one, maybe some kind of ace 7, 8, 9, something
You
along
think the
those
button
lines.
has the ace?
Yeah, because the big blind he'd been doing these kind of tiny bets a lot into kind of boards that were kind of dry all night. So this wasn't unusual for him, his leading out. But the button's raise definitely set alarm bells off.
Well, let me ask you this question, though. What ace does the button have? Are you saying that the button has ace 7 of clubs?
I thought potentially the ace of clubs with some kind of raggy card like an 8 or a 9 that might have had some backdoor possibilities. I'm not sure.
So here's the thing, Lewis, like, going back to like pre-flop hand reading, right? You said the guy was playing like pretty tight, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how often is this guy going to call with like ace 7, ace 8 off on the button to your under the gun open pre?
I'm not sure. Again, he was kind of a guy who had maybe only played with 2 or 3 times before this, so I didn't have too much kind of history with him. But he hadn't played many hands at all since sitting down.
I honestly think that when the button raises here, he has 2 pair plus. Almost always. Sometimes you could get, maybe I might be able to get on board with, because it's such a small bet and you called again, he might have the nut flush draw. But I actually think he either has 2 pair plus or was sandbagging something on the flop, like a set, or he's got like, ace 7, ace 8 of clubs, something like that. Again, I don't think that you can fold, but I think that that's what really he has. Like any other single paired ace just doesn't make any sense if it's not like the nut flush draw here. So I just, ace jack, people are saying too. Sure, like I said, 8, 2 pair plus. So yeah, I mean that's kind of my take. Now, so button goes to 50. What did the big blind do?
He calls.
I Another one of these spots here. So 15 up to 50 call. So the pot's 165 and it's 35 for you to call, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you still have to call. It is getting very, very similar to that hand from last week, though. I mean, you've got a gut shot here to a 10 in the second nut flush draw. I assume you called?
No, I jammed.
You jam. Oh, you back jammed.
Yep.
So why did you? So let me ask you. Wow, that's not. I did not expect that. So what was your thinking of back jamming here? Like, why did you? So remember, back jam is big blind bet. You called, button raised, big blind called. So what would be the purpose of you jamming? Like, what are you trying to accomplish here?
Basically trying to kind of fold out kind of the hands that I'd mentioned before, kind of the single pair aces. There was a lot more incentive for me to do so since there had been 2 bets of 50 into the pot, so try and pick up the money there. And I did read the big blind as weak, like I said, so I was expecting a fold from him and maybe a call from the button because I didn't want to call and then just brick out on the end. So I did think that maybe I'd get a call and then just kind of let fate decide what happened.
Yeah, but the problem with that, though, Lewis, is that I understand what you're saying, but the problem with that, though, is that you're behind. Even if he has the, there's some big problems I think that you have. But let's say that he did have like somehow single paired ace here. I mean, you only have 12 outs with one card to come. Like he's 75%. All the extra money that you're putting into the pot, you're getting it in as a 3-1 dog. The only time that this makes any sense is if you can get both players to fold. But the big problem that I have here, again, I had no idea you were going to back jam, is that I think, I said what I think this guy's range is on the button, which is 2 pair plus with a nut flush draw. Those hands are never folding. So you're in big trouble because I don't think that he's going to fold. It just seems very, very hard for me to come to some sort of hand that this guy raises on the button after goes call, and then folds, because I don't think he has a single paired ace. And the other thing too, even if somehow he were to have a single paired ace, and I might be giving this guy too much credit because it's small stakes, what are you representing here? Like you're slow playing like pocket jacks?
Yeah, it's like I did think that the line itself looked really strong, kind of the back jam. I've kind of seen a couple of your videos before where you did say that a back jam does look exceptionally strong when it's done.
It
So I
does.
did think that would kind of give me credence to having value rather than the draw that I did have. So yeah, maybe something like 3s, 4s, pocket jacks, maybe, I don't know, maybe
Here's
an
the
ace
thing.
king or something.
Right, here's the thing. Like if the turn wasn't an ace, like say the turn was a 10, that would even be better, or the turn was a 9 or something like that. This play would have a little bit more credence. The problem here is that if the button has the nut flush draw, he's never folding. I mean, even if he's not getting the right price and you showed him a set at 1-2, he's just never folding because he has top pair and the nut flush draw. So that's really what the issue is, and he's not folding 2 pair. So, I mean, I don't know what happened, but all right. So you hero back jams. I'm assuming the button calls. Am I right?
He folds.
The button folds? Wow.
It took him maybe 2 minutes to do so, but yeah, he folded, yeah.
Wow, that's shocking. What about the other guy?
He also folds.
Wow. Well, we don't want to be overly results oriented, but I'm just being 100% honest with you. Sometimes we get lucky with we get in aces versus kings. This one might be a little bit lucky in terms of the result here. Did you ever get like any type of reveal about what they had or anything like that?
Yeah, this hand basically sent the table into overdrive. They were all kind of saying, "Oh, what did you have? What did this guy have?" and blah blah blah. So I was the sporting one. I showed first, and then I did get a reveal of the other 2 hands as well. And the button folded ace 4 of heart.
So he did have 2 pair.
He did have 2 pair.
I mean, what is he doing? That's what I said. He has to have 2 pair of the nut flush draw. And what did the big blind have?
He had the ace of clubs and the 3 of spades.
Ace 3 off. Ace of clubs. That actually that all right. So he had ace 3 off because you said he was kind of a fishy. Oh, so he had aces up too?
They both had aces up and both folded. That's why I thought this is just a weird hand. I basically called it in to more get your opinion on the folds than the hand
Well, the
itself.
folds are just kind of, I think sometimes a lot of these guys get lost. I could never in a million years ever fold the buttons hand with being ace four, because the reason why I couldn't do that is because put myself, like if I tried to put myself in your spot in the middle, if you really, first of all, if I have ace four, I'm blocking pocket fours, right? But if you really have pocket jacks there, are you really just going to call the flop and the turn? Remember, the big blind bet 10 you called, the guy behind you called, right? The turn is an ace, the big blind bet you just called again. Are you really going to do that with pocket jacks on jack of diamonds, four of clubs, three of clubs, ace of spades? Like, I would feel like I would be more likely to think that you have like ace king here. I'm serious, like ace king with like the king of clubs, and like you called the flop, and now you're just like, fuck it, I'm going with it on the turn. You could never pry ace four suited out of my hand there on the button.
That's exactly what I did think when I saw the hands. I was like, there's no way that both of these hands have folded to that rate.
That's crazy. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't like your raise, because those hands are supposed to call.
Yeah,
Those hands are supposed to call.
100%.
Yeah. So, like I said, we get lucky in different ways. Thank you very much for the call, Lewis. I appreciate it.